Hey, what's up guys? John here. If you can prove me wrong in this message, I'll fully delete this video. I'll give you full credit because all I'm after is the best information. And if you have better information, that's what I want, and I will produce and put that video out on my channel for everyone to see. I believe the real estate market is going to get absolutely crushed. And it's not going to be for traditional reasons such as inflation, rising interest rates, affordability, supply chain issues, job layoffs, none of that stuff, AI, robotics, none of it. It has nothing to do with any of it. What is going to happen, and this is coming straight from whitehouse.gov, that's how certain I am that this is the intention, this is what they are doing, that is going to have such a profound impact on the real estate market that no real estate investors are paying attention to. Because all real estate investors right now are looking at is they're looking at inflation, they're looking at the benefits of borrowing debt at 3% fixed over 30 years, acquiring hard assets, inflationary hedges, and they're really just looking at riding cash flow, looking at, fix and flips. They're looking at opportunities where they can multiply money. They're just trying to get creative in the real estate market as if it's any normal cycle, as if we're in a great market to just continue doing this. And if it wasn't for this, I would probably agree. I would think that this is a great inflationary period and a great time to simply just accumulate hard assets on fixed rate debt. But look at this, whitehouse.gov, this is what their plan is, and these are all the cities that they're going to be going after. So it's a combined 33 cities and states in total. So fact check Biden-Harris. So before we begin, look at the URL, whitehouse.gov. Fact check, Biden-Harris administration launches coalition of states and local governments to strengthen building performance standards. Today, President Biden announced during his remarks, this is about 3 weeks ago, so January 21st. Notice no one's talking about this. Today, President Biden announced during his remarks at the U.S. Conference of Mayors that his administration is teaming up with states, cities, laborers, of industry to launch the Building Performance Standards Coalition, a first-of-its-kind partnership between 33 state and local governments dedicated to delivering cleaner, healthier, and more affordable buildings. With nearly 20% of the nation's building footprints in their jurisdictions, the partnership facilitates new commitments to design and implement building performance standards at the state and local level, creating good-paying jobs, union jobs, lower energy bills for consumers, keep residents and workers safe from harmful pollutions, and cut emissions from the building sector. Today's announcement builds upon the Department of Energy's efforts to upgrade 1 million homes and makes progress towards President Biden's goal to retrofit 4 million buildings and 2 million homes during his first term. So he has about give or take about 3 years left in his term. So for him to fully upgrade 1 million homes, they would have to start this in the next 6 months. 6 months, a year, they'd have to start this. But what he wants to do is he wants to do 4 million buildings, 2 million homes on his first term. So they're going to be starting this very, very soon. New federal actions today in tandem with close state and local coordinations will accelerate programs towards reducing building emissions at all levels of government, including the states, territories, tribal nations, and local jurisdictions. Federal investments, technical assistance builds capacity, expertise, and infrastructure to advance climate and environmental justice aligned with local and state level needs and opportunities. What's fascinating here, though, is people are like, okay, they're just going to upgrade. They're going to upgrade these properties. So it gets crazy the more research you will do on this. So, for example, there's a company out there called Y-Green. They're partnered with Pace. And what they do is they say, yes, we will help you make your buildings fully compliant. We're going to help you do this. But when you take out this loan, it's fixed between 15 and 30 years. And when you sell your property, you cannot pay off the loan. The new buyer, I'm going to show you this, the new buyer assumes it. So right here, the PACE loan will be transferred to the new owner, right? And so you ask yourself, if you can't get your property free and clear, what does that look like, right? And these loans are between 4.99%, 8.99% fixed. A $100,000 loan over 30 years. You're going to pay back about $1 million, right? So you think about all these people right now, we have record high consumer debt, record high margin debt, record high credit card debt. Everyone's, just borrowing. What is this going to look like when these upgrades come into play, right? And so we go here, it says, when building performance standards are designed in partnership with frontline communities and key stakeholders, innovative and equitable solutions can address multiple needs in a community. Energy efficiency improvements and electrification in multifamily buildings improve indoor air quality, eliminate drafts, and protect residents from extreme heat, delivering health benefits and lower health care costs. For building high performance buildings are not only good for the world, they are good for bottom line, attracting higher occupancy rates and generating more revenue. So they're putting $3.5 billion investment for home weatherization, right? And they're going to be targeting 700,000 homes, more energy efficient, lower consumer electricity bills. They're going to make $1.8 billion available to state and local governments through Department of Energy to expand building retrofits and policy implementation at the state and local level. And President Biden will continue to work with Congress to extend even more acts under the Build Back Better Act, right? And so where these states are going to be located, right? And so here, it says advancing state and local building performance standards to 33 state and local governments. And this is with the ultimate goal of advancing legislation or regulation in each of the represented jurisdictions by Earth Day 2024. So, people would say, well, I already own my home. It's grandfathered in. There's no way. Well, I covered this a little while ago. This is CNBC. Ithaca becomes the first city in New York to be fully decarbonized. And so how they are working is that they're going to be using building and safety. They're going to be using building and safety to change the laws. So this right here, it says many more city decarbonizations will follow Ithaca, right? Local governments are best positioned to lead on buildings. Local governments are in a good place to tackle the building issue because many existing policy structures given them the majority of the oversight in regulating buildings. A big reason why cities have really emerged as leaders on decarbonization, particularly buildings, is traditionally land use and development has been more in the realm of state and local governments, right? So these are the locations that they're going to be starting with. And again, this is with the ultimate goal of advancing legislation regulation Earth Day 2024, right around Biden's term. State of Colorado, State of Washington, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Minneapolis, Aspen, Atlanta, Boston, Cambridge, Chicago, Chula Vista, Columbus, Denver, Evanstown, Fort Collins, Grand Rapids, Ithaca, which I've covered, Kansas City, Los Angeles, which I've also covered, Milwaukee, Montgomery County, New York, Orlando, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Portland, Prince George's County, Maryland, Reno, Sacramento, St. Louis, San Francisco, Savannah, Seattle, and Washington, right? So that's where they're starting, 33 locations. And they go on right here, they're saying that the law provides more than $1.8 billion to support building sector policies, including $500 million for DOE, state energy programs, which provides funding for technical assistance, state and local governments, tribal governments to advance state-led energy initiatives, right? So they go on to show you kind of how the money's going to break down. But I found this very fascinating article from The Hill. And so The Hill said that the goal really is to take every single home off fossil fuels, every single home. So the 33 is just kind of the beginning. And they had an interesting suggestion here. It's called the Green Bank, which, this is pretty new to me. It says the Biden administration can also increase the $27 billion figure in the retrofitting plan earmarked for the Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator. The Federal Green Bank would provide loans and investments to private companies that augment their clean energy offerings, installation, heat pumps, and more, right? And so loans, it's interesting. And when we're looking at Ithaca, how they're working with Ithaca, for example, because they're not using Y-Green, they're not using PACE, they are using private equity firms. So these private equity firms they're very well positioned here. So they say, you need to show a return every quarter, he said. When you set up a big, ambitious project like this, the next administration will have no choice but to continue regardless of ideology. It is a win for private property owners and households to see more buildings become more efficient and produce less emissions, and for partners in private equity seeing a return on investments that work for the environment. Again, this is CNBC, and this is the private equity companies talking about this. They are going to basically attach a lien to the property, and that money is going to make these buildings compliant, right? These buildings are going to be compliant. And if you default on a lien, what happens? What will happen? Well, they're going to pursue their rights, which could be foreclosure on your property, right? And so this is the big question. When we have an economy that's being heavily fueled by debt and fears of inflation, right? We have whitehouse.gov telling us, this isn't speculative. This is what they're doing. They're telling us that these are the locations that have already committed to it. This is what's going to happen January 21st this year. This is what I believe is going to be the biggest problem in the real estate market. It's not going to be anything else. These changes, I believe, are going to be very expensive, because when you weatherize your property and you take your home off of fossil fuels, just think for a moment, everything inside of your home, how does it get power, right? How do you turn the lights on? How do you operate a stove? How do you turn on your AC? All of this, everything, for the most part, is going to be heavily dependent on fossil fuels. When you're taking these properties off of fossil fuels and you're bringing them up to these standards, what's going to happen is that you are going to incur a large expense, right? You're going to incur a large expense. And when we're looking, right, for example, in Local Law 97 in New York, 1 in 10 bills in a sweeping Climate Monetization Act requires New York City's 50,000 largest buildings to reduce carbon emissions by 40% by 2030, right? 40% by 2030, but by 80% by 2050. So the changes continue to progress over time, so that you have to continue doing these modifications. And so the big question I ask myself is, I believe that some people are going to try to do the bare minimum, definitely, if they can afford to do that. But I do believe that the supply chain issue and the shortages, probably over time, the items you're going to need to make these buildings compliant will only become more expensive. If we look at what inflation was last year and maybe what it will be this year, if everything just stays the same and just gradually progresses, what you're going to see is over a year or 2 years, you're going to just see a bigger expense in terms of labor as well. So all of these things likely could be more expensive. So if you have a really good property, what I would suggest doing, figuring out how much it's going to cost you, right? But if you look at the overall population doesn't have $500. The overall population doesn't have, an emergency happens, they are going to be in trouble for the most part. People live paycheck to paycheck. When you hit somebody with a fat expense, like what it seems, per the whitehouse.gov is saying, this could be a problem. This could be an issue. And I believe that what's going to happen here is, I think private equity companies, I believe companies that are positioned to initiate these loans, they're going to be the biggest winners in the real estate market. It's not going to be the flippers. It's not going to be the multifamily investors. It's not going to be anybody else. It's going to be these people taking out loans, issuing these loans. You know why? Because if they default, they're basically acquiring these properties. They're going to acquire the properties. And so if they have very low debt on these assets and they're making the loans, in relation to the amount of debt that they have on these properties, then if inflation continues progressing at its current levels, let's say that in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that property is going to be worth a hell of a lot more than this dollar, because by then, who knows even if we're going to have a reserve currency anymore in 15 or 20 years. If you look at history, no currency stays reserve status forever. That's at least been what history has taught us. And if you look at Druckenmiller, who broke the Bank of England, he came out in Forbes a while ago saying that, he believes also that dollar is going to be stepping off reserve currency. You look at Russia, they're accumulating gold at levels that we've never seen before. So I do believe hard assets are going to be the way, but I believe that people are going to be very surprised by this curveball that's now being thrown in our direction. But I'm more curious as to what you guys think. Am I wrong? Please drop it below. Supply real good proof rather than saying fearmonger or this isn't true or this isn't happening. Drop facts below, drop the evidence so people can read. And if everything you say is correct and you can prove this completely wrong, I will again delete this video, and on my next video I'll give you full credit for supplying better and more accurate information. So please also tap that like button and follow me on TikTok for short form content. Sub here, consider subbing on my personal channel, and catch you guys later.